Thanks so much.
Thanks everybody for taking time today. We're going to talk about the trends. Oh, actually, I'm going to turn this back to you. Sorry, Susan.
That's okay. You were just so excited to get started.
I was excited to get started.
Well, today, yes, we're here to talk about the trends impacting associations. And those trends, they can be like wind at your back and really help you accelerate your association and grow it. Or those trends can really be disruptive and cause challenges to your association and its very existence. So Dan Stevens is the president of Worker BTV, who was just speaking. Dan will be your presenter this afternoon. Dan has spent 36 years in technology, where the rate of change has always been fast. Dan has a keen capability for speaking trends early and helping shape organizations to really capitalize on those trends to protect themselves from disruptive trends. Dan has a significant experience in the association space. He's been a longtime board member of the international chairman for the Entrepreneurs Organization. In his day job, he's president of Worker BTV, and our organization helps associations leverage video strategically. So with that, Dan, please take it away.
Thank you. So disruption occurs when organizations fail to change at the speed their environment is changing. And the rate of change right now is really just starting to accelerate. As mentioned by Susan, trends can either be in your face or at your back. And some of the big overarching changes are, number one, demographics. Right now, if I look at the association space, it reminds me of those days when we still had to have a fax machine, we had email, we had the phone, and because of that we were cascading all of these different demographics. And we're kind of doing that now. Before the baby boomers completely retire and leave the association space, that's where we are today. It's creating a lot of change, but the really big change is about to come. Technology is changing everything, the way we behave all the time, and our behaviors for consuming content and engaging with organizations is changing. This is a book I put up. I read this just before the holidays. It's pretty impactful. It talks about the 12 technological forces that are going to shape the next 30 years. I have 3 daughters. Each of them got this in their stocking this year. I really encourage everybody, if you haven't read this book, to read it. There's nobody that's not going to be impacted. Before I talk about 5 key trends relating to associations, I am going to launch a quick poll. So I'm going to launch the poll and give you just a moment or two to please answer. Is your organization feeling the impacts of change due to technology, organization demographic change, and member content and consumption behavior? So I'll give this just a few more seconds while we get everything in, and then I'll end the poll and then share the results. Okay, a few more seconds. I'm going to end it now. And let's share the results. Hopefully you can all see 100% of the people said yes, some a lot, some said somewhat. So I'm glad you're on this webinar today. That will give us a chance to hopefully make sure that we understand how these changes are coming, what the impacts are, and how to leverage the trend so it's at our back and not in our face. So trend number 1, free. It is the new model. Whether it's software you download for free, whether it's an app, whether it's all of the social medias that have really pulled us in with free and then now have monetized us in different ways. But it's starting to hit the association space. This is Day Spa Industry Association, join for free. Their membership is 100% free. All of their revenue comes from non-dues revenue. So I ask yourself, is your value worth paying for when so many of our competitive offerings will be, if they're not already, free? And what would your pricing need to be for your events, for your member services, for your sponsorship and advertising if there were no dues? And would those be competitive to other offerings in the marketplace? It's a good question to ask. It helps you focus on what is unique, proprietary, very specific to your members, and sticky, that you offer that others don't? And what percentage of my members are truly engaged, not just members, but are really engaged, show up at the events, volunteer where appropriate? How am I measuring that engagement so that I know how sticky I am and that the value I charge for membership will stay? What would be the impact of increasing pricing on member services or sponsorship? And are you ready to increase non-dues revenue to protect yourself should the need be to either lower your membership fees or eliminate them altogether? The lessons and takeaway on free is really make sure we are measuring engagement. Don't just measure membership. It's really important to understand what percentage of your audience, right down to who, is engaged and why are they engaged? Are they engaged for specific topics? And how can we measure that and help serve up the best content for them to keep them engaged? Our quality program, whether it be on our website, in our magazines, in our newsletters, in our social media, how are we doing against our competitors? We need to measure that against market, and we need to price that against market. We really need to increase the gap between member and non-member pricing and value. So often we see associations where the non-member price is only about 10% more or 15% more than the member price. Well, if I'm only going to engage in one or two things a year, why would I join? And is that non-member price relevant to what the true value of an event or a webinar or some accreditation or something else may be? So really look at understanding your competitive situation, what the pricing is, and what your value proposition is. And where appropriate, focus on growing non-dues revenue so you protect yourself. Trend number 2, everyone is a publisher, all competing for our attention and our relevancy. There are no barriers to entry anymore, thanks to the internet, thanks to social media, thanks to blogging. Everybody is a publisher. And look at the noise. There's 700 million groups on Facebook every month. Each year we produce 2 million books, 16,000 films, 30 million blog posts, and 182 billion tweets. And I think that was measured before President Trump got involved. So it is really noisy, and everyone can be seen as a publisher of content, competing with you for time. And people invest their time, where they invest their time, they invest their money. And the real trend right now is that all of this is being measured now. And you'll see that if you read the book. Google has purchased 10 artificial intelligence companies. Facebook, with machine learning and artificial intelligence, is monitoring us and deciding what we should see, what to filter out, what they consider noise for us based on our habits and our behaviors. And how do we ensure that our association never gets clicked for unsubscribe? How do we not get filtered out either by the member or prospective member or by a third party? So what is your most valued content? Is it rich? Is it relevant? Is it entertaining? Is it a good reason to be a member of this association? Is it unique compared to alternatives? And are members engaged between your events, not all year long, not just at the event? But the real questions behind that is our best content truly accessible? You know, we see often where a magazine editor has some phenomenal content, or maybe there's some special publications that have been produced, but nobody sees them. 2 years ago, in 2016, 53% of all content consumed was mobile. That number will be up in 2018 significantly. So if you're only publishing your best content in a magazine, as an example, is it being seen? Why is your best content not published across all mediums? And we'll talk about that as we think about moving into an omni-channel model. This is the International Food Service Manufacturers Association. And they did something unique this year. They decided that 6 of their keynote presentations at the conference were worth promoting as conference all year long. But not just recording it in video. They recorded it in video and it was released as a 2-minute promotional video so that really quickly, in a bite-sized way, people could watch, understand the context of this particular one of 6 sessions. But look on the right-hand side. They could watch the full video, listen to the podcast, or download the slides. Had they had a magazine, they could have transcribed that audio podcast into a magazine article as well for both digital as well as offline consumption. We're seeing this trend of multimedia. It reminds me back to that example of I need the fax machine, I need the email, I need the phone. And so it's a really great opportunity. What are the lessons and takeaway? Well, in order to be digitally relevant, which in order to hit the majority of your consumer and your member consumption habits, really look to have one content calendar for the entire organization, not by medium, not by department. It should be balanced, and each department obviously would have some insight into what should be included. But if you really want to think about your member, think holistically and have a content calendar built by association. The higher the quality of that content, the more unique it is compared to other sources. Publish that across all mediums, video, print, audio, digitally and offline. And leverage technology to manage cost. Starting with a video and converting it into an audio and then a transcript is only $500 or so, depending for a full hour of content. Whereas starting with an article and turning it into a video might cost you $4,000. So think about the lowest cost way to become multimedia. And then measure story consumption, not page views is an important measurement on your website, but story consumption really gives you an indication of what your members really value you for. And so that you can look and make sure that your content calendar is proportionate to their need. Trend number 3, beware of the Trojan horse. Would you knowingly share your membership database and purchase history with a competitor? I'm pretty sure if I put a poll up right now, the answer would be no. But that's exactly what we're doing with social media. These algorithms, machine learning, and artificial intelligence are already starting to know our members better than we know our members. It's pretty scary. And it's creating that model where they will serve the content based on their understanding of what we think we need. So today, Google and Facebook and YouTube and everyone else, their revenue is all ad-based. But tomorrow, it will be data and member services based. All of these organizations, Facebook, Twitter, everybody, LinkedIn, are investing in membership models that are competitive to associations. And they start with that free, trend number 1, to acquire your data, give you utilitarian value, no doubt they do, so that you don't mind giving up your security, giving up your data, having them go and purchase credit card data and merge it in with your behavior so they know where you shop and what you do. So it's a scary world as we move forward and look at this, which is one of the reasons why you're hearing about a lot of growth in blockchain, which is really designed to fight this so that you control what other people see and what data is allowed out. So we must ask ourselves, has social media tricked us a little bit? Are they monopolizing the railroad? Are they trying to Uber or disrupt us? Are they our association's Trojan horse? And the answer is yes, they are. That doesn't mean we can ignore them. They're powerful mediums. They're great opportunities to access existing and future members, but we must use them strategically. I pulled this article just yesterday from the Association's Now Daily News. Facebook burns a bridge, changing their algorithms for someone else's advantage, not yours. So just be cautious about whether we use these platforms for awareness or do we use them as our actual medium. Everyone's probably seen the end of a YouTube video where you see all of these additional videos you have access to. On average, 50% of these videos will have nothing to do with your association. They'll have something to do with the algorithms of the person watching. And poof, they're gone. And the subscribe down here is not to your association, it's to YouTube. That provides even more value and more learning and understanding and tracking by YouTube and Google. So how do you use social media wisely? And I believe we have a guest from ASQ, the Society of Quality, on this webinar. So thank you for joining. I'm going to use you as a best practice because, and you would think with the name quality in the name, ASQ, the Society of Quality, they would actually do so. But this is an example of a video that they post into social media to drive awareness. And I'll just quickly play it with no audio. And I hope that that plays well through this webinar. But as you can see, there's lots of on-screen words and graphics. This is about a 22-second video, and it's really designed to gain interest on this particular topic and give one click up at the top access to go from wherever they are, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook. These get posted in all of those formats, and have that person click and then move through, let me just close that, and move through to their website where they have the full version of the content, which happens to be 5 minutes and 30 seconds in this example. But look what else they've done. Beside the video are calls to action to engage more deeply in the learning and courses available from ASQ. On the left-hand side, I can share this with others if it's relevant to my coworkers or other members. If I need to access special information like purchase the ISO 9001 2015 standard, I'm one click away. If I want to subscribe to this TV channel, subscribe to ASQ, not to YouTube, I'm one click away. And if I want to drill down on other channels of content, I'm one click away. And so it's made it really easy for a member to, with very few clicks, find the information they need, engage, and then after engaging, take action. Additional learning, additional courses, sharing, downloading, registering, whatever the next course in the journey that is logical. So the real lessons and takeaway here is own your audience. Serve members in your brand. Look at the journey it is on your website today, especially if you're using YouTube or LinkedIn or Twitter or other offline assets to serve content. I often see where part of the journey will start on your website and then off I go to, say, YouTube, and I may never come back. So map the journey, pretend you're a member, or especially a new member, and how many clicks to get access to the content. It may help you rethink your model and your workflow. Use social media for interest and awareness only, especially with machine learning today. Version your content like ASQ does so that only the awareness and interest, not the full story, is available in social media, and use it to pull people in. And time is of the essence. AI is not available yet to really understand and read through the content in videos, but they're expecting that a year from now in text, in online, in social media. It is there real time today. Trend number 4, learn from the mistakes of publishers. Failure to adapt to the consumption habits of the audience and also the needs of sponsors and advertisers, which relates well to non-dues revenue, is what's happened. And we're seeing this in the consumer world, but we're also seeing it in the B2B world, and we're also seeing it in associations. A digital magazine does not mean you're digitally relevant. And what tends to happen is when we have our editors aligned to a medium, like a magazine or a newsletter, or just one of those elements, they tend to love their medium more than they love their member. And that's where the beginning of the end starts. At the same time, from an advertising standpoint, brand advertising is dying, what I used to call a slow death, but it's now accelerating. The demands for sponsorship and advertising, for ROI, for content marketing and self-publishing, it's just growing, and it's growing at the expense of brand advertising. I'm going to talk a little bit about this more later. You know, the American Nurses Association has been written up twice now that I've seen about how they're modernizing member acquisition using Facebook. And they're doing a phenomenal job. If you haven't seen that story, look for it on Association Now as an example. But when it comes to their own sponsors, they're still doing the traditional brand advertising. Lanyards, Wi-Fi sponsors, signage, and branding ads is good enough. And that is a recipe for disaster. If free happens and you have to rely on non-dues revenue more, you better start modernizing your sponsor programs and getting them aligned. When the new CMO comes on, who isn't maybe as in love with the association as the baby boomer who's been there forever, they look at measurement. They don't really care whether it's an association or somebody else that brings them value. It's all about measurement. And it's very difficult to measure the impact of a lanyard or a Wi-Fi sponsor. So make sure your sponsorship programs are relevant to both members and sponsors. And what I mean by that is that often, you know, the sponsorship has nothing to do with value to the member other than generating non-dues revenue and keeping costs down. But there are opportunities to make sponsors experts and to make sponsors part of your content in a valuable way for members as well as generating revenue. So learn from the mistakes of publishers. The real questions are, am I omni-channel? By omni-channel, am I putting my best content in every medium I use? From social media to pull people in, to print, to digital, to video, to audio. Am I leveraging that choice so I maximize my reach and my engagement based on my best content? And of course, by doing that, I can probably maximize my sponsorship at the same time. For my sponsored programs, do I allow sponsored content? Do I allow the sponsors to be an expert? Do I allow some degree of exclusivity as well as brand advertising? Blend those three. And can I lend my publishing capabilities to my sponsors and my members? By nature, every association is a publisher. And while everybody else is trying to become a publisher, maybe that's a service you can provide and offer value to. So what are the takeaways? Omnichannel is really what makes us digitally relevant, maximizes that reach. I encourage you to look at monetizing your sponsors and advertisers in two ways, both as content sources and experts, as well as supporters of your content sources. This is both good for the member and for non-dues revenue. Make sure there's an alignment and a benefit. If you always think member first, it's always the best place to start. Look to have one content calendar. Break down those silos between your magazine and your video and your audio and your newsletters, and leverage your best content across all of those mediums. It does require you to purpose it. You didn't see a 5-minute video in Twitter. You saw a 22-second video in Twitter. You have to massage and manage the content for each of the mediums, but keep the core messages and watch your engagement level grow and the amount of reach on that content grow. And as I mentioned, include sponsors as a content source. Lessons and takeaway from this is to shift from a non-dues revenue sales by medium and a transactional relationship with your sponsors where you're calling them once every month or two. Sit down and look annually, maybe even multi-year, with your top sponsors. Look at their needs. Understand their level of expertise. Where could we help them be a publisher, and what expertise can they lend to our members? And design a program that is truly win-win. You will find it grows your non-dues revenue. It creates a stickiness and engagement with your sponsor that you also want with your member. And this is an example of what that could look like, where the sponsorship includes events and video and magazines and newsletter and website and webinars. And as a byproduct of that, it may generate some assets that the sponsor can use on their own website for their own outreach, videos, research reports, PDF documents of magazine transcripts or articles. And you're providing value as a publisher, and you're simplifying their outreach for their marketing and sales lead nurturing process. And when you break that down and blow it up, don't worry about reading the detail on this, just look at the colors. Make sure that it's not all pink. It's not all brand advertising, which in most cases, 90 to 95% might be. Sprinkle in, infuse content marketing and thought leadership. Find opportunities for exclusive sponsorship where appropriate, and blend that into the model. You'll really grow your revenue, but you'll also grow your content calendar. We've seen associations where as much as a third to 40% of their content calendar is sponsored content. It took no time. It took zero cost. It just generated revenue and great content for your members, because at the end of the day, you always approve what goes live. Trend number 5, video is definitely changing everything. I just looked this up yesterday because I had 80%, but it's actually in 2019, they're expecting 84% of web traffic to be video. That's a quote from Cisco. And the reasons why are obvious when you think about it. We are bombarded with content. And although we get a lot of email and social media posts, video is still a smaller percentage of that, and it's even though it's growing. So it does cut through the clutter. If I only have time to look at a certain number of things, someone who sent me a video and went to the trouble, I'm probably going to watch. But the real reason is this growth in mobile. On a phone, video still looks good, but I can't read the website that well, and I certainly can't read the newsletter that well. Another driver is that our solutions are to problems, whether that be editorial content from you to the members or sponsored content that you allow to go through to the members. Solving problems is more complex. It usually involves some degree of technology, and it's a harder thing to describe in a short amount of time unless you're using video. The younger generation not only needs to be informed and educated, but they like to be entertained while they're learning. Video helps with that. And just the overall ADD and impatience, that world that we live in because of the amount of noise. This slide really demonstrates that mobile is a key driver in this. If you look at last year, this dark blue is mobile video consumption. Look at its growth just by the end of 2018, 2019, and into 2020. It's staggering. And the other reason is many of us are visual learners. So ask yourself, is your content rich, relevant, and entertaining? Does it solve your members' problems? Does it keep your members current? Does it help them in their career? Does it inspire them to act? And is it worthy of not being filtered either by them or by their artificial intelligence that's filtering for them? And do you have a balanced use of video? We'll often see where the majority of video being used by the association is just selling, testimonials for new members, promotional videos to get people to sign up for events. That's okay. That's a very good use of video, but you got to balance how much you give versus how much you ask. Members look at that and go, they're spending my best dollars on the best medium to not me, but to somebody else. So balance where you're investing your content in informing, educating, and engaging, as well as promoting and marketing your member services. And use the right size and the right length where appropriate, from those 15 to 30-second videos in social media to say 30 to 90-second for promotional videos. Those, we call them edutainment episodes, where I can get short, quick, but deep knowledge on a topic in under 4 minutes. TED Talks and panels at your conferences tend to be more of a deep dive. They tend to be anywhere from 5 to 15 minutes. And then online learning, if there's badging and accreditation associated with that content, you can break it up into, say, 30 or 1 hour, or maybe even as long as 2-hour increments. Now, video is changing everything, and it's a huge opportunity for associations. And what I liken it to is the old days when an association had a magazine. And think back, for some of you, to when you first got a magazine in your association. It created a gap or a differentiation between you and others, because not everybody could do a magazine. Well, although it's getting easier and less costly for anyone to do video, it's still not easy to do good video. And so if you're doing good video on relevant, rich, entertaining topics for your members, you'll create the old gap you used to have with your magazine. You'll create a gap between those Facebook groups, those LinkedIn groups, those bloggers. They don't have the monetization capability to do video the way you do. Video also bundles well. It bundles well with other mediums like print or PDF articles or your website or your newsletter, and look at video more as a horizontal, not as a department. It actually behaves very well in all of those areas. It also bundles well with sponsorship. You can infuse video into your sponsorship models and not just throw out the old brand advertising, but accentuate it. And so that you're not shifting money, you're growing your overall revenue. And video is extremely measurable. That's one of the reasons why the new CMOs are moving to it, that and the mobile growth, is that you can not only measure it for your sponsors, you can measure the engagement level by your members. You can see where they came from. Did they come from that social media video post? Did they come from a newsletter post? What did they watch? How long did they stay? And then what did they click on after they watched the video? Was it a register? Was it a download? Was it to move on and continue their education journey? And video also simplifies this move to a single content calendar. It simplifies this move to omni-channel, because when you're starting with video, it's easy to come down to audio, and from audio down to transcription or closed captioning as you may need. So it allows you to become multimedia or omni-channel very, very simply, as opposed to it's a lot of work when you're going up the hill. And it also simplifies growing your annual sponsorship. It works the same way for sponsorship. Those sessions that were 2 minutes on the International Food Service Manufacturers Association site that I shared a bunch of slides back, they were all sponsored. And the sponsor showed up on the 2-minute video, on the 1-hour video, on the 1-hour audio podcast, and as an entry for the slides. So they were able to increase their overall revenue because they provided more value. Instead of just the people at the conference, their entire membership saw it. Instead of a 3-day value, it's a 365-day value. And so you can leverage that not only for revenue, but for reach and engagement. And speaking of IFMA, just to really emphasize the power of video, they had done a program with one of their sponsors where the PDF report, which was a joint research report, was emailed out, and it was gated, to see how many people would actually give up their name and their information to download that report. And when they did it to an audience of 4,000 people, they only got 8 people download. So a video was put together to promote it. The internet is about give first and then ask. So the video gave context to what you would get if you downloaded the report. That same 4,000 people received access to the video. They achieved 700 downloads on that report just because of that context. So it's a real good example of 2 things. Number 1, the power of video, and 2, how working in conjunction with media. Video is great sometimes to be the short story, but if you have a lot of charts and a lot of graphs, you can't beat a printed report for that. tying the two together is really 1 + 1 = 3. So we like to call it using video strategically. And what does that mean? It means that whether from your overarching strategy down to departmental level, down to a given video, is that you have measurable objectives on what is this going to mean to my member. Am I informing them about an event that I want them to register for? Am I entertaining them and educating them? What is this particular video? What is the value for the member? And then how does that line up with an association objective? Is this something that I'm going to use to enhance engagement? Is this something about retention or recruitment or to sell member services? How will I know I've succeeded? And what criteria, what measurement criteria am I going to analyze to see if I'm hitting my goals? And along the way, am I generating, no different than a magazine of old, am I generating some sponsorship or advertising or pay-per-view? Am I generating revenue on that transaction to help pay for all this? And to keep those member dues either reasonable or to protect me from free. So the key lessons and takeaway here is don't forget the Trojan horse. Video is good, but you should control the platform and you should control the distribution of this video. I'm not suggesting you don't use YouTube. YouTube is a great place for you to put video content to attract new members. But to service your existing members, do it in your own brand, from your own website, own your audience, and protect yourself from the algorithms of YouTube and Google and others. Use video appropriately against those 3 circles I just had up, the member need, the association goal, and the financial target. It's a real simple way of really understanding, should this content be produced? If it's not giving 3 potential pluses, you have to really ask yourself, why am I doing this? And if I'm going to the trouble of producing a video, should I be doing it an audio podcast? Should I be transcribing it into print or digital? Does it make sense for this content to be seen everywhere so that I maximize the reach and the engagement level and the value to membership? And use it to elevate your sponsorship models as well as your content models by infusing video into your annual and your event sponsorship and advertising programs. And what I really like about this is it does create that gap between you, the bloggers, LinkedIn, and free. That membership does have its privileges. I failed to share earlier that the 2-minute video that the IFMA Association used before you could watch the hour-long or listen to the podcast or download, when you clicked on either of those, you had to be a member to get access. If you weren't a member, you could click another button that would allow you to request access. And that was an opportunity for them to capture new member prospects. And so you can that ties back into those 3 circles of not only am I using this opportunity to demonstrate the value of membership, but I'm also using it to create a gating to capture leads for future members. And along the way, of course, it was sponsored. So I wanted to leave time for some questions. So we're getting close to the end. So I will look forward to see any of those Q&As pop up. But let's go back to the 5 key things we just talked about. Free. It's coming. It's here in many cases. It may not mean that you have to be free. So think about it, though, because it is going to be one of those disruptors. Everyone's a publisher, including your sponsors, including your advertisers. Are you providing enough value to them to work with you as opposed to doing it on their own or moving to social media or somewhere else? Beware of social media. Beware of that Trojan horse. Use it appropriately. Learn from the mistakes of publishers. Fall in love with your members, not the medium. And leverage video, especially in this growing mobile world, and this need to be omni-channel and multimedia, especially while our organizations have this, from 20s to 70s age group. Measure your member value. It's all about engagement. Try to create a par like you do in golf or a scorecard on what is engagement. Is this particular member below or above that line? And price your services at market. If not, if only for your non-member price, look to see that it's at market. I would rather see a 25 or 50% gap in price between what a member pays and a non-member than a 10 to 15% delta. And don't worry about losing that. If you do your research, you'll still gain, as a matter of fact, you'll gain more revenue because it will still be of good value. When we talked about social media, again, leverage the heck out of it for awareness and for pull. And just like the American Nursing Association is doing it for awareness and pulling in new members into their website. But also think about your own, the way you treat sponsors and the way you're treating members, and go, hang on a sec, I should probably be more modern in my approach there, not just for the way I'm using it myself. And use video to create that gap between you and others. It's a really unique opportunity in time to get that gap back before everybody else catches up. Focus on making sure that we're informing, educating, but also entertaining our members along the way. It's how they learn now, especially in video and especially with, Snapchat and social media and gaming. Put that level of fun into it wherever you can. Elevate your non-dues revenue by infusing video into it. You can accelerate your revenue, but you can also accelerate your content and your alignment with member needs. And by doing so, it will make it easier. It's not easy to be omni-channel. It's not easy to take a piece of content and make sure that it's available in the right format for all of your social media platforms, all of your, your newsletter, your website, and so on. But when you start with a video, it's actually quite easy to come down to audio, to come down to print, to shorten up the headlines into a smaller video or into a smaller post into your social media. And look, organize by topic, measure by topic, not by department and not by page view on your website only. It really does get you to understand what members see you as an expert in, where they value you most, and where maybe in your research against competitors that you understand where you're just equal or maybe not even as good, but you are special in this particular area, and weight your topic and weight your use of omni-channel and multimedia around those areas. Grow from your strengths, not trying to fix all your weaknesses. And I do have one more poll that I'd like to put up in a second. And let's just do that right now. So I just have to figure out how to get to the next poll question. Wouldn't that be nice? It's stuck on my first one. Let's give me one more time here. Well, I don't know if I'm going to be able to get to it. So with that, I will say thank you very, very much for your time. I want you to take control of these trends. You can put the wind at your back instead of in your face with these trends. Create that gap between you and your competitors to associations and to free. I thank you very much. We will stay online for Q&A, and I will open up the Q&A so that we can look.
Dan, we did have a good question from Bruce. He said, thanks for the good ideas. Some of these, like changing the ways associations work with sponsors, free membership, use of video, are culture change for some associations. Agreed. Any tips on how associations can change their ways and adopt these new practices?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it is definitely a reality. And by the way, just in case we didn't mention it, we are recording this webinar, and we will make it available within about 24 hours to everybody. But it really does start, and video does help you a little bit in this way because video is horizontal, and it actually works in every department. Whereas so often we see a medium being used by only one department. And so that starts to break down the barriers, because people do want to leverage this new capability to get that joint discussion going. But really what it requires is a commitment from senior management, from leadership, to say, if I want to generate growth in my non-dues revenue, I've got to provide measurable value, because there are so many competitive offerings to my sponsors where they can get measurement and sometimes self-measurement. And so knowing that, feeling that pain, and being afraid of that disruption usually gets the conversation going. And the best thing you can do is just ask your sponsors what they want. Sit down with them and say, if you could draft a model, what would you want? And don't just limit yourself to things we've always done. What do you need? What are you an expert at? What topics can you speak to? We had one legal association that said, it's an oil and gas association that said that there were about 5 legal topics that their members really needed to understand, but they had no budget, certainly no expertise on these legal topics. So they packaged up a sponsorship and went to the law firms and said, and they didn't say, would you like to buy a sponsorship? They said, can you speak as an expert on these topics? And they sold those topics for those people to be in their video channel, speaking and educating. So they got content for free, they made money, but for the sponsor, it made them a thought leader, an expert on those topics. And so it was a really good win-win. When you take a small example like that, it opens and starts to break down those old habits, those old changes, and then you can start moving into those examples like we had in the slides, where you're truly sitting down and having people allocate their budget across web, digital, print, video, audio, events, and so on, and generating assets for the sponsor's website. I hope that helps. It's not easy. We get often involved to help consult in those areas, help package those areas. So if it's something you feel you need help on, please reach out to Susan and I, and we'd be happy to see if we can.